Hello everybody. Happy Halloween. How are you doing on this most frightful and spooky of evenings? Are you ready for another scary stories in the dark ASMR video? I certainly am. I've brought something special. It is a giant pumpkin that I crocheted for Halloween. I just finished it yesterday, although I made the stem today. There's a bit of fuzz on it. And I thought it would be cute to put in the video, but I had no room for it. So the pumpkin is here in spirit. And there's a small pumpkin over there that I made. So I'm just gonna hold it. It's quite a nice little lap pillow actually. This year I'm gonna be reading another 5 scary short stories from Reddit. And if you want to look at the stories, read along, the links are in the description. I'm also going to put in the links to last year's scary stories. Maybe this is your first scary story video of mine and you'd like to see more. I'll put the link to my entire spooky ASMR playlist down there too, so you can see previous year's videos and all of the horror games I've played and Halloween themed videos. Alright, we're gonna get started with the first story, and I sort of ranked them from least to most scary, sort of. A couple of them are kind of dark, so there's going to be some violent themes of horror stories, but just wanted to give you all a little heads up if that's not your cup of tea. It is really quite hard to find short, scary stories that are not too scary that you couldn't maybe fall asleep, or are suitable for ASMR. Let's get started. This first story is called "I'm Worried I Showed My Children a Movie I Shouldn't Have." My favorite family tradition is movie night. Every Friday at 7 o'clock sharp. I make a big bowl of popcorn, sit down on the couch with one twin on either side of me, and put on a flick. Usually we watch whatever Oliver and Olivia want to watch, which for the past 3 months has been the Despicable Me movies in order, one after the other. Now, I like Steve Carell as much as the next person, but if I have to hear "he's so fluffy" one more time, I worry I might actually lose it. So, for movie night this week, I suggested we watch something Mommy wanted to watch. My darling twins didn't even argue. They are impeccably polite for only being 8. This is where I might have made a mistake. I decided to put on a movie that I remember watching when I was their age. I showed them The Witches, a lovely little film I used to watch on VHS on my grandparents' farm. It didn't go well. There were a couple scenes that were much scarier than I remember, especially the scenes with the Grand High Witch. I thought it would be fine, but both of them have had nightmares since watching the movie. I figured they would move on after a couple weeks of watching Despicable Me, but unfortunately The Witches made a lasting impression. I checked the search history on the iPad they share, and I was worried by what I saw. How to tell if someone is a witch. How to keep away witches. How to kill a witch. When I asked them if they knew witches weren't real, they just smiled and said, "We know, Mommy, but I worry they're not being truthful with me." For the most part, they simply refused to talk about it. I decided it was probably best to keep a close eye on them, but not bring up the topic of witches anymore unless they brought it up first. I thought things were getting better with them until one night, after watching Despicable Me 4, I tucked them in like usual, but shortly after falling asleep, I woke to a scream. It was Olivia. I thought it was probably just a nightmare again, but then I heard Olivia scream again. "Mom, help!" Now I started to panic. I rushed down the hallway to their bedroom and saw the door was wide open. I tried to run in, but something smashed my head when I did. I thought at first that one of them had slammed the door in my face, but when I gathered my senses, I could see that the door was still wide open. Oliver and Olivia were both awake, standing there and staring at me with a look of terror in their eyes. "Oh, clever girl," I said, looking down at the thick line of coarse salt that they had poured across their doorway. "I should have never shown you that movie." So I have never seen The Witches, but from the comments I gather that that is a method of keeping out witches, like they're a slug or a snail or something. I mean, mines of salt is often used in like witchcraft, right? I think it's a really, really good story with a really fun twist at the end that you may or may not have seen coming. I like to think it has a happy ending where she teaches them to be witches and they live witchily ever after. Okay, let's move on to the next story. We're getting gradually scarier, remember? This story is called "My Parents Forced Me to Have a Sleepover with the Unpopular Kid." His name was Robert, but everybody called him Bobby Odor. There's not a nice way to say this. He stunk. It was an unplaceable smell, and it was horrible. Anyways, I was deeply unlucky. Apparently Robert's parents called my parents concerned. Surprise, surprise. Bobby Odor was having trouble making friends. The kids were bullying him. Couldn't our sons have a sleepover? As if I wasn't unpopular enough. I didn't have a choice in the matter, but I did feel pretty bad for him, so I was going to at least try to have a fun time. When Robert came over, I showed him to my room. "Whoa," he said. "You have your own bathroom?" "I do. Pretty convenient." He went right into the bathroom and closed the door. I heard him spraying my Axe body spray, a sound he tried to cover by flushing the toilet. I should have thanked him for trying to cover up the smell, but I already promised myself I would not mention the smell. He came out, and I showed him the stash. I had Mountain Dew Baja Blast, Ice Pop Prime, Cool Ranch Doritos and Fritos, double stuffed Oreos. These are just the things I hoarded in the room. "We got options," I told him. "I've never had soda before." He seemed sad or embarrassed to admit. I cracked the top and handed him a Baja Blast. "Prepare for glory," I said. He sipped it gingerly and smiled so big it must be the first time in his life he'd smiled. "Alright, time for Fortnite." Of course he didn't know what Fortnite was. swear this kid lived under a rock. I played one just to show him how it worked. Then I handed him the controller. His eyes lit up as he played. He died pretty quickly. He tried to hand me back the controller. No, I said, keep playing. I want to see you win one. It took 4 hours, 3 Mountain Dews, and a lot of backseat coaching, but he finally got a victory royale. He jumped for joy and started tearing up. You're the first person ever to be nice to me. Don't mention it. Damn, now I really started to cry. Tears poured out. He sobbed. You hate that I stink, don't you? No, I hate it. It doesn't matter how much I shower, how much I scrub, how many times I wash my clothes. I can't get the smell out. It's my parents. They make me clean up after them. They're disgusting mess. I clean it. So many pieces, organs, bones, and blood. Oh God, I'm so sorry. I thought you'd be mean, like everyone else. He gasped for air, face soaked in tears. They made me do it. Made you do what? Unlock your bathroom window. My bathroom door creaked open. Robert's parents stood in the doorway, smiling at me. His mother held up a syringe. His father pointed at me. We'll start with him. Do you think that this one has a happy ending? I like to think that the main character and Bobby overpower his parents. Maybe they used the syringe on them, and poor Bobby lives a happy life playing Fortnite and drinking Mountain Dew Baja Blast. But I don't know. Alright, what did you think of that one? Okay. I'm gonna move on to the third story. Gradually getting a little scarier. They might be, negligible differences in scariness, so you might think some are scarier than others. This was just sort of my ranking. Just adjust my glasses. Okay. Someone left a note on my windshield saying, "You died yesterday." My immediate thought was chalking it up to being a prank, but it was so specific, so bizarre. I took it and put it in my pocket. I tried not to think about it, but also, contradictorily, I watched for proof of anything out of place. Not much. Morning drive was the same. Paperboy. I can't believe there are still paperboys delivering bundles of printed words, doorstep to doorstep. Traffic, same cadence, same slow areas. I felt the same usual impatience. The sun shone down, feeling as it always did on my skin. I go to work, took the elevator up, and sat down for my 9:30 a.m. meeting. My mouth hung open when, mid-presentation, the executive said, of course, none of this should matter to Peter. He, died yesterday, after all. Then a few muted laughs. He returned to talking about our dwindling sales. The meeting wrapped up, everyone exchanged their "see you laters," and that was that. I answered emails at my desk after that, completed some scheduling admin tasks that seemed like they held continuity from yesterday. I caught a distinct-looking woman watching from a distance on the office floor. And then, at the end of the day, I took the elevator down. That same woman got on as the doors were closing. She said, "There's a bit of lag time before looking away, then getting off at another floor." At home, I hugged my wife and kids the normal amount. I didn't want to be too desperate. To my chagrin, something small had changed there too. "We'll miss you, Dad," said my daughter from across the dinner table between bites of steak. My wife, in bed later, held my hand while we were watching TV. She interrupted a conversation about house renovations with, "I feel optimistic about the verdict, about what'll happen to you." My confused look wasn't assuaged as she then returned to the previous topic. Midnight, I noticed a light on downstairs. I headed down. The woman from the elevator, pen in hand, looking over documents. "Oh," she said as I approached. "Sorry for the delay. We're almost done." Her look wore a tinge of empathy, but primarily just routine. It wasn't a bad life, just the ending was unfortunate. That reckless driving accident. You killed a kid. I didn't know what it meant. "Best go back to sleep," she said. "We'll have the final answer in the morning." So I did, surprisingly falling unconscious the second my head hit the pillow. When I woke up, it was 9 a.m., but still seemed dark outside. An eclipse hung overhead, casting a dark, reddish blanket over everything. Downstairs, wife, daughter, and son sat at the dinner table with wide grins. Their eyes avoided mine. I stepped outside. Neighbors were huddled at their windows, smiling like they were in on a joke I didn't know. The houses looked the same, but something was off. I found a new note on my windshield in the morning darkness of the street. Hell. So I feel like that's a good one because you kind of understand that there's an unreliable narrator. We, the audience, pretty much know he's already dead, but our narrator doesn't know. And there are little clues as to what happened, like the mention of the paper boy and his reckless driving. And then, of course, he ends up in hell. So, pretty cool, but a little dark. So, let's move on to the fourth story, which is, my husband's snoring is ruining our marriage. My husband snores like a freight train. For 3 difficult years, I have not gotten a decent night's sleep. It doesn't matter what I tried. Earplugs, melatonin, nothing helped. When I suggested we sleep in different rooms, my husband refused to even consider it. Married couples are supposed to sleep in the same bed. Arguing with my husband was like trying to knock down a brick wall using your head as a battering ram. He didn't care that I could barely function at work or that I was nodding off in traffic. He only cared about his traditional view of marriage. Husbands and wives sleep together even when they snore. I wanted to rip my hair out. At the advice of a friend, I tricked my husband into participating in a sleep study. The doctor told us what I had suspected for years. My husband had severe sleep apnea, which meant as long as my husband used a CPAP machine, his snoring would stop. I could finally get a decent night's sleep. The mask is uncomfortable. I'm not sleeping with that on. Jesus Christ. I reminded him that if he didn't, then his risk of having a stroke would skyrocket. Like I care. I mentioned that it was possible he could literally die. I'll die happy in my sleep. I finally snapped and I said I would divorce him if he refused, and do you know what he said? "I'd never let you do that." I packed my things to spend the night at my mother's and gave him an ultimatum. Wear the CPAP or lose me. He could take the night to think it over. I returned the next morning after a restless night of sleep. I've taken steps to prevent our divorce. I asked my husband if he meant he decided to wear the CPAP. Of course not. Yesterday, after I left from my mother's, he drained our joint bank account and put the money into a new account that only he could access. Unless you want to be homeless, you're stuck with me. I was being held hostage in our marriage. That night, my husband begrudgingly put on the CPAP mask to appease me for giving him the silent treatment. Just for tonight, and if I don't like it, I'm throwing it away. I knew he was going to throw it away regardless. Fortunately, he fell asleep fast and hard thanks to the CPAP. I quietly took out the CPAP's reservoir and poured out the distilled water. Then I filled up the reservoir halfway with bleach and halfway with ammonia. I shook it up and put it back in the machine. Once my husband stopped convulsing, I emptied the reservoir and placed it outside in our garbage can. In the morning, after the garbage truck had come, I'd call for an ambulance. I'd tell them he must have stopped breathing in his sleep. I lay down in bed and got the best night's sleep of my life. That one is quite dark. Although, I do have a question. I would think, realistically, signs would show that he did not die of a stroke caused from sleep apnea, but actually from, inhaling dangerous chemicals straight into your lungs. So, I would think she's not gonna get away with this. But, who knows? So, I wonder what you all think of that one. As I search for short, scary stories to read, most of them this year were about spouses killing each other. Either a wife killing a husband or a husband killing a wife. Just those two. And it was just very hard to avoid. I thought that was one of the better ones because it feels slightly justified, as if, it ever is, but it was also less gory than others. So, we have one more story to read. This one I think is the longest and also the darkest. So, if you wanna skip it because it's too dark, that's okay. Or you can just fall asleep and that's fine. If you're not too scared to fall asleep, don't forget you're actually safe. I mean, look how cozy everything is. We're just telling silly stories in the dark, okay? The last story is called Every Year, Our Town's 18-year-olds are sacrificed to the sea gods. This year, it's my turn. Mom said being chosen by the sea gods would feel like butterflies in my lungs. My boyfriend was chosen last year. Kyan started choking up blood-stained water in the middle of class. Within an hour, the town elders dragged him down to the beach shallows. I didn't see his sacrifice, but I did hear his frightened cry. Even when they sliced Kyan's voice from his throat, I heard his gurgles for breath. For mercy our town would never grant. My town had a funny way of saying, "Sucks to be you," when sacrificing their 18-year-olds to appease a sea god. Being chosen did not feel like butterflies in my lungs. Waking up with salt water gushing down my mouth, I screamed for my mother. I was choking, spluttering, drowning. It hurt, strained my chest, and taking hold of my heart, squeezing between phantom fists. Mom carried me down to the shallows where townspeople already gathered. I was forced to my knees in ankle-deep water. So cold, and yet I felt weirdly comfortable, almost at peace, enveloped in the waves. I wasn't as scared as I thought. Mom was dragged away, and a sacrificial blade pricked my throat. I didn't even feel it. 1 second I was alive and breathing, a warm sun on my face, the cool wind rushing through my hair. Then I was sinking. Down. Down. I was aware of the blood staining the water. Vicious red caught in a halo around me, deeper, and somehow my lungs were still working. My breaths coming out in startled bubbles exploding around me. I could feel it, a presence pulling me down. It was warm and cozy, and somehow I was alive. I could move, catapulting my body further down. It was only when I began to see towering underwater landscapes, a whole city bustling with fish, did excited bubbles pour out of my mouth. Schools of fish flew past me, mer people carrying tiny mer babies with their fluttering tails. I recognized them. Maya and Olivia, who were sacrificed 2 years prior. They swam past me with brand new tails growing from their torsos, completely blanking me. I followed them, aware my human legs were a little slower. I stopped, however, when I glimpsed him. Kyan. He was beautiful, sporting a long silver tail. His dark curls were adorned with seaweed like a prince. Kyan. I had no voice. Instead, red-tinged bubbles exploded from my mouth. I started towards him, but his eyes were strangely empty, hollow. Looking closer, I noticed seaweed wrangled around his throat, markings carved into his arms and face. Kyan swam past me, tailed by a bulging, fish-like thing that resembled a girl. In her arms, a tiny baby with bulging eyes and a deformed head, with Kyan's features. Finally, the voice in my head was an inhuman boom. Above me, the inky darkness of a gnawing mouth, and out of that mouth, thousands of mutated fish people resembling men. Another female. Very dark, right? Definitely the darkest. This story gave me like whiplash. It starts out with just so much like dread and horror, and then for a moment in the middle you're like, oh, this isn't too bad. You get to become a mermaid. And then at the end you're like, oh, I don't think the humans are equal. Yeah. So, pretty dark and scary. I hope you enjoyed this year's crop of scary stories. Like I said, it's getting harder and harder to find fitting ones, appropriate ones that are not too short, not too gory, interesting. Hope you like my pumpkin. I just really wanted to show it off. And I hope you appreciate my attempted candle display. I have all these nice candles, but it's very hard to put them around me because the bed is kind of low down and you wouldn't be able to see them down there. So I had to try to stack some boxes and like balance them precariously. I know it looks a little wonky, but this Halloween special marks the end of another year of spooky videos. I always like when Halloween falls on a post day, because then I can actually do a special video on Halloween, although I know a lot of you are often busy on Halloween, so I think the number of people who actually watch my Halloween videos on Halloween are slim. But if you did enjoy this year's spooky videos, please do give them likes and or comment to help the algorithm, because I'm debating if I want to keep doing it next year. I don't know. I might just do not as many. I know you guys will always enjoy them, but the scary stories are getting harder to do, so it'll just depend next year if I can find enough to warrant a video, because even this video is kind of short compared to my previous ones, because the stories were kind of short and I struggle just to find these 5, so we'll see. I hope you all have a really lovely Halloween. I'd love to know if you did a fun costume, so if you did a costume this year, tell me what you are in the comments. I'd love to hear. I have none. I have no costume this year, because I don't really have many Halloween plans. I think a party at a friend's house, and maybe like an event, and then I'll do trick-or-treating with the kids. That sounds like I have kids and I'm taking them trick-or-treating. I just set up a thing in my neighborhood and give kids candy. But I don't really have anything to wear, so I'll probably just put on my witch hat again. Yeah, I guess just I'm gonna be a basic witch, like from the first story. Hopefully there'll be no salt across the doorways to keep me out. Okay, that's it from me. That's a wrap on Spooky Videos 2024. That's a wrap on October. Oh my god, it's only 2 more months in this year. That's crazy. Okay, I hope you have a great November. I'll see you in a few days with a new video. Alright, I love you all. Stay safe this Halloween. Stay healthy, stay happy, stay cozy.